The worst first half since the 1970s. You're going to be hearing a lot about the 70s throughout the show, especially with our next guest as well. A lot of research being done in the market here, just so you can get a bit of a granular breakdown of that, because Apple, quarter to date, down 20.3%, and that would be between public and private, business leaders and governments, because with all due respect, you're not an elected political official, but you do have a lot of influence, of course, as a very successful entrepreneur. So how are you saying that businesses can work with government here? With the latest. Good morning, Matt. And plenty of people were worried about this speech, were worried it might mark a new shift in a strategy in Ukraine. But interesting, Ukraine wasn't mentioned specifically by Putin.
Lockwood. Rosanna, I do want to talk a little bit about the global impact that this is having, particularly on the markets. The ruble is down quite a bit, but what else can you tell us?
Yeah, I think it's important to note that just from a tone perspective here at CNBC this morning, the way that we're dealing with this, of course, is looking at the financial impact of what we've seen happen overnight in Ukraine. But mentioned Iran there. Now, Russia is now the most sanctioned country in the world, even more than Iran. So I just want to ask you, Mr. Vitrenko, what do you think the way out of this is for Russia?
The way out is to withdraw troops from Ukraine.
I hope this isn't too personal for you, Russia, but I want to get your reaction, how you felt when you woke up this morning and saw the news.
Well, it's shattering news. My family is in the western part of Ukraine. My friends
I mentioned already they're Hungary, landlocked, Slovakia, Czech Republic, those countries hugely dependent on Russian oil, and Russian oil via the Druzhba, that's the friendship pipeline. So that was the issue here, that Orban was basically holding up this so-called complete ban on Russian oil imports to the EU, because he was saying we can't, we are that dependent. Well, what a carve-out Hungary has managed to do here.
And Rosanna, this is really weird stuff. You don't see things like this happening very often, ever.
Yeah, it's funny, Becky and Joe, actually, you're talking about crypto there. I've heard some people saying this morning that traders should have piled into nickel rather than Bitcoin over the last few months. Some people have made it. We get it in Europe, and the cycle continues. And it only takes the sentiment of one big story, like a Netflix earlier in the week, or like what we saw yesterday with the NASDAQ, and that sets everything off. And I'm still interested that there still seems to be some sort of strength in the China story, despite the fact that these lockdowns continue. Absolutely. Jumana, Japan's longest-serving prime minister, and there'll be a moment of reckoning for Japan here. There were many comments earlier on about the safety that was around this campaign rally, as you said, for these upper house parliament elections. Abe was giving a speech for that.
Morning, Karen. Yeah, we're stood here at Britain's busiest airport, one of the busiest international airports in the world as well, Heathrow, talking about the resumption in international travel. It's come back with a boom, but that does mean issues for plane makers, for jet fuel prices, for airlines and for airports. We'll be here throughout the morning. We'll break it all down.
6 senior Conservative MPs or members of the party that have publicly called for the PM to resign. And then what's secretly going on behind the scenes, which are these letters towards the 1922 committee. Reports so far, but it's unconfirmed, that it could be around 35 gathered so far of the 54. So that's quite a serious amount of momentum, but it's also a closely guarded secret. So there's a lot of Westminster whisperings. Karen? Live in politics, but then also saying that it's just party stuff when a prime minister broke the rules, the own law that his own government set. It just sets a very troubling precedent. How do you rebuild trust in the Conservative Party when so much trust has been lost? There, Steve, one has to wonder whether we're going to see the lectern wheeled out at some point this morning. As we all know, here in Britain, that does tend to forebode some kind of resignation speech. But as you mentioned there, this could be many months in the making. The Conservatives will likely retain power for quite some time. Let's talk about Nadeem Zahawi manufacturing these trucks in the UK. It's very much a British story, this. But what does that mean for you in terms of pushing these trucks out? We've got, supply chain disruptions, inflation, like everywhere else in the world. We're also contending with Brexit.
Do the same. The producers want to hear your comment, Rosanna. They want to hear more. They want you on the stomp at Abingdon Green.
Who wants commentary? You know, I'm not here to provide a bit of commentary, but I will provide you with some of the facts there. Now, you've already mentioned those a few decades since we've seen this kind of inflation, Steve. It's quite extraordinary. And with Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor, set to deliver